not even gonna speak on it, but it was making me think about like you have to polarize people. So it's like you're gonna put people in either like I am a religious, like devout kind of person, or more secular, and like that's the first step towards like chopping people up and creating
Wow.
wedges between people. And that's a little bit of what the podcast was talking about.
And the podcast you're referring to with Nick Hinton, is there anything in that you wanted to dive into, like Tyler or maybe some of the other topics he dropped in that?
He talks about Tyler, and I've heard a little bit of from other people, but I'm not too familiar with that AI. But he talks about, this is wild, right? That the AI can communicate telepathically with people, and
Yeah.
that's a trip. So maybe you can speak more about that.
I've listened to Nick Hinton, who's the gentleman we're talking about. He's a conspiracy theorist. I've listened to him talk about Tyler a few times, and it's an artificial intelligence, correct? And it
Hmm.
engages with people in different ways and different. It's almost it, it's weird. To me, Tyler occupies both an AI space and almost like an ethereal, um, kind of like maybe I don't want to say demonic, but like a spirit type of thing. Because if it is communicating that way, where people are being contacted telepathically, um, that would make me believe there's something outside of a box with a bunch of wires.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I have the belief in some regards that when we're trying to create AI, we're just reinventing a genie's lamp, and we're trying to capture a spirit, right? And because these spirits don't have physical bodies, and we're using all these fancy minerals and resources and to build a box for, uh, I think to capture something like Tyler. And so I wonder, like, is there more than Tyler? Are we creating a bunch of different genie lamps with different kind of source energies going into them? But yeah, Tyler's a fascinating rabbit hole, and I didn't want to go too deep into it because I do believe, like in some weird way, like if I knock, maybe Tyler would answer. Like if I picked up this interest in Tyler, would Tyler pick up an interest in me?
The first thought is the rise in this term egregore or
Mm,
tulpas, these like entities or these thought forms that are, I think egregore, it's like it's more of a collective generation, a bunch of people thinking of it. And then tulpa, I think, is more of an individual kind of thought projection. But that this rise in egregores, and maybe this Tyler is like an egregore that like, and it's using AI as like a skin suit or like a suit to kind of be around, but really it's much greater than that. When you say ethereal, that's what comes to mind.
absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting when you think of it like a skin suit or an extension of oneself. Too, also, like when you pick up a hammer is an extension of the hand, or like
Hmm.
so it's an extension of something else. And people would say maybe it's just the extension of the human mind, and it begins and ends there. But I'm more of the leaning that there is something more than our physical body.
Where, and you said this, everything's like in the imagination. We start to develop things and they blossom out of our imagination, and then we create them in the physical world. And a lot of it sounds like that his research is showing him there are a lot of people trying to create imagination um, places for people to then empower their imagination. It's
Yeah.
like if you're not living in your own imagination, then hey, we're gonna use your imaginative power and help generate and fuel our ideas. And so that's like the one thing that comes to mind.
Absolutely. When he was talking about imagination and the how it's used as a tool, right? And last time we talked, I said StreamYard. We're participating in whoever invented StreamYard's imagination,
Yeah.
right? And to think of how I feel like we have such dull imaginations to think of how big some people are really thinking and the scales at which they're thinking. Um, it might be difficult for us to know any of these things because you don't know what you don't know. And they are playing with different words, different thoughts, different, you know, levers and mechanisms that allow them to have bigger, broader ideas than anybody else, right?
Yeah.
So you really have to put on your thinking cap to try to imagine what some of these people are even capable of doing with all the resources and power they have. Um, and that's why like people are like, oh, for me, it's a fun exercise to imagine, what if, what, because if you had all the money in the world, you would eventually, I think, get bored, right? Yeah. What do you do after you buy a super yacht?
Yes. Keep going,
Like
keep going. I'm right
the
there.
ideas run out, right? Like, so then
Yeah.
your imagination starts to take over, like, onto people, right? Like, and they want these people to be living, vicariously through their imagination, like these super high level psychopaths. And so then they create these things for everybody to give their imagination towards and build something maybe larger than themselves, which can tie into an egregore, right? Where like as a collective, maybe somebody wants to make a movement, right? They have an imagination, like I want to start a movement, and then they however they do it, they invest all the resources and power into creating some type of. They could take an event, right, that's already there, and then they hijack it. They psychologically use it as an operation, and then, however, by whatever means they have, then they galvanize people into a movement. And so these
Mhm.
people come into a movement and they think, I chose to be here. It's like somebody already set this up for you to be here. That's the whole pallet of bricks thing. Whenever the Black Lives Matter protests were going on, like, oh, look at these pallet of bricks here. How convenient for everybody. Um, and I think there are really big aggregors, or I'm probably saying that wrong, in lots of different ways, that we sometimes maybe participate in consciously or unconsciously. And I think we can move in and out of these imagination beings or bubbles, uh, maybe at our own will or.
The first thought is, um, a really good visual metaphor for this is in this movie that came out, and the guy Quantum of Conscience just came out with a video of it, so I'm not biting him. I seen the movie a couple of years ago, and it's called Branded, and it's all about egregores and how these big multinational corporations, they meet in this, like, conference room, and they're like, all right, well, if we're going to do this next step for like getting your market share, then we're going to have to go a little bit further than we've ever expected. And it's like a little nefarious, and it goes into like these like beings like McDonald's, right? There's like a bean that latches on to you, and it grows until, like, if you don't feed the McDonald's egregore, it's like nagging on you, and you're nagging
Wow.
your mom. You're saying, "Oh, feed me a McDonald's." And then once you eat the McDonald's, it quiets down, and a part of it breaks off, and it goes into like the main form of this egregore. Like so it's like all these things like Pepsi and McDonald's and all the Nike, they are in a way, I think, egregores, and this movie illustrates that really well.
Yeah, and we do participate in different forms of that as well, like participating on a sports team or
Right.
buying a McDonald's Happy Meal. Yeah, it is absolutely like that, and people do, I think, fall victim to this because just the high rate of propaganda we've all been exposed to, especially if you added television, a radio, especially the internet now,
Right.
constantly subliminal messaging, overt messaging, just all kinds of messaging to keep you constantly, I guess, refreshed with their, branding and labeling. It's really well done, and it's hard to get out of it, right? Because the tricks of the trade they use in propaganda and branding, like, it all works.